I'm Joe Midiri from Cole's Music, and today I'd like to talk about what I think is probably the most dreaded of musical instruments, and that is the metronome. A lot of people, when I say, do you practice with metronome, they'll roll their eyes or they're almost like they're afraid of it, and they don't realize that this little device could be their best friend. It is a tool that could cut down how long it takes us to learn a new passage of music by half to 3/4 if used correctly. I like to use the analogy that if you had a yard full of leaves and somebody says, go out and pick up those leaves one at a time, it would take you a long time to do that. But if you had a rake, it would take much shorter time because that's a tool for picking up the leaves. Same thing with the metronome. It's a tool to help us to learn new music. I remember when I was in high school, we had a clinician come in, and the clinic comprised mostly of him just playing fast passages for us. And I guess everybody was impressed by how fast he could play, but there was no learning of how he got there. What was the process that got him to that point where he could play these? Anyway, I want to talk about how to learn new passages of music and how to use a metronome. First of all, if I have a new piece of music and I'm going to look at a passage and I want to practice it, the first thing I'm going to look at is the key signature. I can't tell you how many times I hear people practicing and they're playing B naturals when it should be B flat, or F naturals when it should be F sharp, because they didn't look at the key signature. So as simple as that sounds, look at the key signature. Second, look at the passage and see what it's comprised of. Is it a scale? Is it an arpeggio? What scale is it? What arpeggio is it? I remember talking to a student who was going to college as a music major. And I said, how did your jury go? And they said, well, I flubbed this one passage. And I said, well, let me look at it. And all it was 2 arpeggios repeated. And I said, well, what arpeggios are they? And they're looking at it like they're trying to figure it out. If they had taken the time to do that in the beginning, they would probably be able to play the passage without even looking at it. So look at what it comprises of. And then look at the passage and see how it can be divided. Can it be divided by the measure or by when there's a logical breath mark? Because you don't want to practice the passage in its entirety from the beginning. By breaking it up, it's a faster way to learn it because you're only taking a little bit at a time. When you do that, though, you want to, let's say we're going to take one measure of the passage and we're going to work on that. Play it to the first note of the next measure. Don't stop at the bar line. That bar line is not a stop sign. The music is supposed to flow from bar to bar. The only reason we have bar lines is so that we can very quickly figure out what the rhythms are, because it shows us the measure, how it's divided. So music should flow past the bar line. So when I practice a measure, I want to make sure I go to the first note of the next bar. Most important, where the metronome comes in. You want to choose a starting tempo where, not that you don't make a mistake, where you can't make a mistake. That you are confident that you can play it any number of times without making a mistake. And the other part of that, and this is the most important, is that you're able to play it totally relaxed with no tension whatsoever. I have a friend of mine who always likes to show me new passages of music that he's been working on. And I suspect he always practices too fast. And so he might be playing the right notes and the right rhythms, but you could just feel the tension when he plays. And his fingers are hammering the keys. Everything's heavy. It sounds like it's tense. It sounds like it's a hard passage, even though he's playing it correctly. For music to be successful, it should sound effortless. If you hear somebody play and it sounds like what they're playing is hard, or it sounds like it's fast, they're not achieving what they should be doing musically. Musically, is what should stand out is the music first, not the speed, not the difficulty. All music should sound effortless. So I try to pick a tempo where I can play totally relaxed. If it's a 16th note passage, for example, I will start out making the 8th note the pulse, not the quarter note. So now I'm only playing 2 notes per beat because 2/16 equal an 8th note. So you have to disregard what the final tempo is going to be. And I know that's hard to do, but don't think about how fast it's going to eventually supposed to go. As a teacher, I never tell a student, next week I want it this fast. Next week I want it to this metronome marking, because that's only going to create tension in the student. Everybody learns at their own rate. And I find that I can tell a student, I want you to play this passage at half tempo for a week and not any faster than that. And they'll come in the following week and I'll say, now play it at tempo. And they'll protest. They'll say, you didn't tell me to practice it at tempo. I've been practicing it at half the tempo. And I said, just try it. And they can always play it because they've learned it relaxed. That is the important thing. So if I took the second variation from the Weber concertino, I'm going to start out with the metronome maybe at eighth note equals 80. And it's up, you have to pick what works for you. Wayne Andre, the trumpet player, claimed that when he was working on new passage of music, he would start at the lowest point of the metronome and gradually bring the tempo up. Don't be in a hurry to get it up to the tempo that it needs to be. You have all the time in the world to do that. It'll get there, I guarantee it. What I'll do is, so let's say I start at 80 on the metronome, which, let's say that's the tempo I picked. And so once again, I'm going to take maybe one measure at a time, work on that measure. I'll play the measure, you know. And so forth, right? If I'm happy with that, I might play it one or two times, and then I'll take the metronome and just move it one or two clicks faster, and then play it again. And if I'm happy with that, I'll play it again. You might play it 5 times, you might play it 10 times, each time moving the metronome up. As soon as it gets hard, or as soon as you start making mistakes, put it away. You're done for that day. You can do the same process with the other parts of the passage, but that you're done with that passage for that day. The next day, start at the same place. Start at 80. And then you'll find you might get it a couple clicks faster than the day before. And the day after that, you might find you get it a couple clicks faster. So it's a long process, but you'll eventually be able to play it at every tempo from 80 up to where it's supposed to be, and every place in between with equal accuracy, with equal ease. Which brings me to my final point. When you're practicing at these slow tempos, the first and foremost thing you should be thinking about is your tone. Always practice with your main objective to being your tone quality. Don't worry, don't sacrifice tone for speed. Because if you always play with your goal being a beautiful sound, full, rich, how you want it, you'll always be happy practicing. I always find people who say they don't like to practice, it's because they don't work on their sound. And if it doesn't sound good, practicing can be drudgery. So anyway, give it a try and enjoy. Thank you.